little notice about a Spanish club project. Middle school family consumer science club. I know there's a real interest, I would say a resurging interest in career technical education. And this isn't the class, but the middle school teacher is overseeing a club. And they made holiday trays and took them out to businesses. This was one, Mike Richardson, the Hawkeye Marching Band. Ray must be a Cyclone fan, he scrolled right by it. Mike Richardson, the high school band director, just sent this to me at home and said, hey, did you see, he had to catch this on his TV or something, I think. So we actually had a couple of Indianola alumni playing in the Hawkeye band that night, and one of them was on TV there. And then we have Simpson College Honor Band, kids who made that. And the last thing was some pictures was Rob Hawkins, and I'm sure if you've been around the community, you all know Rob. The dual role for us of being a police officer. He does lots of substitute teaching in our classrooms too. And then in this time, he was speaking to classes about his military service. So just kind of a neat thing that was shared there too. So a little bit of everything there.
Good. All right. Next is the consent agenda. Retirement in there that was added.
Yep, and then
there was a revised consent agenda, so now hopefully you guys all have that.
Yep. You have you can see it's highlighted a little bit. You have as Rob said, the one additional retirement, and then we have an additional associate ready to approve tonight too.
Did we add, since it first came out, a couple of other early graduates?
Yes.
There are two more.
That's fine.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure. I couldn't quite get to that.
Yeah, you're right. Yep, there
I
are
have no problem with it. Okay.
two more people who have met the requirement to graduate at semesters, 2 seniors.
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
All right. Motion was made by Ken to approve the consent agenda, seconded by Carolyn. Any discussion? Okay. No discussion. All those in favor reply by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries 7-0. Next would be, let's see, we have delegations. Petitions.
I don't believe we had any community members sign up to speak tonight.
Any board members have anything that they'd like to say? Any updates on anything that you guys have done in the community or anything about?
Well, I was gonna bring another, but I was telling Ben on my trips down to Florida, where I go down there and stay quite a bit over the winter or the Christmas break. I got invited. I got to know the superintendent down there really well, and she knows that we had just added an SOR officer, and we're now working on the drills and stuff and perfecting them and all that kind of stuff. And so anyway, it was on a Saturday, and so they got a sheet and you had to sign up. The first year they did it, they didn't have hardly anybody. And then when they had that school shooting, it was almost 99% attended. It was on a Saturday. And you had to bring one parent. So the student had to have a parent with you. So I went to the kindergarten class just to see how it went. And I'm telling you, I admire what Ben does, because it was a well-oiled machine. I mean, it went down elementary and the high schools. It all went down at once. And so the teacher started out, and she's just reading the book to the students. And all of a sudden, so the parents were around the corner, and all of a sudden there was just this extremely loud clap. I mean, it sounded like a clap came over there and come. The kids dropped what they were doing, flipped their desks up, and made a little, like, they call it circle in the wagon or something. And I mean, they circled it up, and you didn't hear one peep out of them. I mean, not one peep. And there was like pretend gunfire in the hallways. And it was the most, and then when it was done, they set their desks up, a police officer came in, he talked to them, asked if they had any questions, asked the parents if they had any questions. And afterwards, I asked the teacher, I said, that was amazing. How did you get to that point? And she says, we felt we were not empowered, and we asked for someone to come in and teach us what to do. And she said, we get it twice a year where an officer will come in and explain new techniques or whatever. And she said, we feel as teachers that we are empowered and we know what to do now and we can protect our kids. I mean, it was one of the most oiled machines I'd ever seen. It was just, it went down like, I just couldn't believe it. Those kids, I mean, they just dropped desk and circled up. And I asked why, and they're the old metal desk. And they have different, I mean, there's a lot of different cultures down there, so there's a lot of different speaking. But it's got that old metal. Remember when we used to sit as kids, it had that old metal thing there? And they said that helps, could stop a bullet coming at you. I mean, it gives them a chance. But I tell you, it had to have been one of the most amazing things I watched. I just couldn't believe it. So I admire, Ben, what you do, because to organize that and get that all just
Yeah.
but I was really impressed because the teacher said that really made me feel empowered. And I know what to do now in case something happens.
Good.
Because they've actually had it happen in
Yeah,
Florida.
yeah.
So
Cool.
it was really cool.
Is it, do you wanna know what we might have heard as we visited schools?
Yeah.
Is that what you want to hear? Okay.
Yeah, anything like that, that you guys.
Whittier I pulled, and I was over there, I finally got a chance to get over there, I'll have more time in the next few weeks. Marvelous conversation with a third grade teacher, and I'm always asking them, said, what do you see that's working, what do you like? And I loved her comments, and, I think everything we're gonna learn as we do this is just somebody's comments. As we hear all in all, we can put them together, it doesn't mean one thing. But she said she was so tickled that still in the curriculum, they had time to read to students. She says it's very important that you still read to students at that age so they have the love for reading.
Yeah,
And I thought, this was pretty good, let me try for something else. I said, well, what's made you the happiest, what tickles you? And she thought for me, she said, when I can pick a book that turns one of my students on to reading, it's the greatest feeling in the whole world. Discover they like dogs and do that.
yeah,
So I was there about 10 minutes and I learned something, so that's pretty decent.
yeah. I had one of the visits with one of the band teachers over at the high school, and he was talking about how, a few years back they had split, maybe a couple years ago, they had split the bands where, not necessarily when you come in, there's two different bands, and not necessarily when you come in, are you in like a 9th and 10th grade band, or you're in 11th and 12th grade band, it's depending upon how you perform, and so it's enabled them to be able to go to different kind of competitions and perform better as a band, and I thought he was really proud about that, and it's also helped, I think, kind of encourage the kids to do their best, and just because you're a senior doesn't mean you're in the best one, and he said at first that was a little difficult, for some, but it's really helping them in their competitions and overall as a band to work together in both those two different sections, those teams there, so, yeah. Anyone else, anything that you did, Ben?
I went to the high school, I think it was the last day before break, and I don't know if everybody was just in a really good mood because they were about to go on break. But, the one takeaway I took from it is I don't know very many of the high school teachers, and I was super impressed with how cohesive the staff seemed there. I just kind of hung out in the break room or the lounge, whatever, and probably talked to over 30 teachers, and I was just super impressed with the relationships amongst the staff, so it was definitely neat to see.
Good. Very
Didn't you get free pizza out of that too?
I did.
Oh.
I won't throw. I guess I've known Josh Lowman for quite a while. First time he's ever offered me a slice of pizza.
He didn't make you pay per slice?
He'll probably bill me.
Or the school.
Yeah.
I've had a few meetings on the side for the mental health committee, some within what are other schools doing, some with what is our own school district doing right now, the other committees that are out there. Making sure everyone that's working on mental health, we all have the same goal. So we don't have all these small little all these committees out here working on different things, so.
Sure.
Making sure we know exactly kind of who's heading up the other ones and how we can make sure we work together to make our bigger picture and our bigger goal. And then have spoke to some other professional organizations around as to their experience in schools, their role in schools, their business plan when it comes to schools and stuff like that, so.
I was able to talk to, Kevin Halterman has a networking group, and Ken and I were there the other day, in the morning. Somebody emailed me afterwards, I'd announced like, hey, reach out to your local principal and see how you can get involved in your school, maybe go in and read, you know, an hour a month or something. I had somebody reach out to me and say, hey, how do we do that? And so I said, well, start with your school that your kids are in and go that way. So I think the more we can talk that to, as we're engaging with civic groups in the community and stuff, and let them know, hey, reach out to your principals or your local teachers and see which ways you can get involved. I think it'll be better.
Thursday before Christmas, I just worked at Irving all day. So did Sue, you worked part of the day. They have centers all day, and so I just headed a center all day for 6 of the groups, so that was really fun, yeah.
Cool. Excellent. Well, thanks, everyone. Yeah, so I'd say just continue to, you know, if you're on the communications, working in that area, try to keep reaching out and stuff and doing what you need to do. So it seems like it's making a good difference and stuff. Next, Mrs. Ellis, is that next?
Hey, I'm here. Oh, by the way, if you don't know me, I'm Mrs. Ellis. I'm the principal of middle school. And I'm kind of here to talk about 6th grade transition camp. And this would be kind of a new thing. I haven't talked very much about it except at admin meetings because I guess it's something I didn't want to get out there a whole lot, get people excited or not excited or whatever, because I kind of want a little bit of what you guys think as if it's something that you guys are interested in or not. So here we go. All right, first of all, the proposal is to have the first day of school would be a transition day for incoming 6th graders. So when everybody else is going to school, only the 6th graders would come to the middle school. Okay, the research out there, and there's a little article there, that the toughest transition for students is the transition from elementary to the middle school. So there's a little bit of research behind it. I'll talk about that later. So the purpose behind Transition Day is, first of all, is to really give the 6th graders a welcome to the school. When they come right now, it's the first day of school. Yes, we've had different opportunities for the kids to come in the spring of the year before. They have open house. They can come for an hour. Sometimes if you want to come earlier, you can come earlier, those kind of things. But this would be a really welcome to the 6th graders. The whole staff would be there. I'd like to create a very positive first day experience where you have a lot of positive attitudes. It gives them a chance to build relationships with the staff. And notice that I didn't say just 6th grade staff, is to build relationships with the whole staff. Because a lot of times they don't even know who the 8th grade teachers are, the 7th grade teachers. They don't know who the custodians are. They don't know who the office people are. They don't know who the nurse is, and all those kind of things. So this would give an opportunity to build relationship with the staff. They can make new friends. We have 4 different elementaries that the kids are coming from, so give them the opportunity to do activities where you can build friends. Also kind of set the expectations for the year. We're looking at the change program for next year, which is really one of the big things is having expectations. And so it kind of set those expectations when it's just a small group of kids. It helps students get over the fear of middle school. I did talk to a lot of kids before it happened and after. They have this fear, and sometimes the fear is something that comes from siblings, it comes from teachers, it comes from all sorts of things, but kind of get over the fear of, oh, we're going to the middle school. Students will go over their schedule several times, so a lot of times that first day is there's a lot of things going on, so it's kind of scary, and they kind of get lost. Sometimes they lose their schedule a couple times. So they'll give them the opportunity to go over the schedule, and they can help with the lockers. That's what exciting things when 6th graders get lockers. So we'll provide help with the lockers. with my proposal, I would like some high school students too could come over, but older students, so they can meet some of the older students that lead some of the clubs, that lead some of the activities, to get some positive, right off there, that positive role model for them, to support the mental health of our students. We do have an increased amount of mental health even in our younger kids. So this would be something to provide them, help them with the anxiety of that first day. So that's kind of the purpose behind it. What would our staff be doing? Because a lot of people are like, well, what would the 7th and 8th grade teachers be doing if the 6th grade teachers are only the ones there with kids? Actually, we'd have a lot of rotations. Possible rotations would be scavenger hunts. We'd have expectations that each of the areas, like what is the lunchroom expectation? What are PE expectations? What are our morning expectations? What are the after-school expectations? We could have a really strong thing about Chromebooks and digital citizenship, kind of going over those expectations where we take a little bit more time than we do now to go over expectations with the Chromebooks. We'd help them with their lockers. Give them another tour of the building, have them see what clubs and activities are available for them. Team building activities. I'd like counselors to do some self-management, organization type things, kind of preparing them for what middle school would look like, where they could get on Power School and, see what the calendar looks like, even things like that. Officer Hackett could give some presentations, office and nurse expectations. Once again, getting to meet those people. Who are the people that, I have to take a bus pass to? So it's, we don't think it's a big deal, but for 6th graders, it's a huge deal to who do I need to take the bus pass to. Do some handbook highlights, kind of go over the library expectations, and maybe they could even check out a book during that time. And then also look at what are some of the programs outside of our school that we have going on. We do have like rec programs after school where they have to sign up anyway, so this would be a good time for them to sign up for different programs and organizations. And of course, the list could go on for what are some of the possibilities that we could do. Okay, what would our schedule look like? And this is just a tentative, kind of throw out there because there's no particular order there. But first period, it'd be something where we welcome the kids to the middle school. And this is where the whole staff would be there. We welcome in off the buses, welcome them in from the cars, all staff out in the hallways. And then we meet in the field house for just a quick welcome and kind of go over what the day is going to look like, do some fun activities and games and things. And then 2nd through 3rd period, we start some rotations. At lunch, we could have cookout, or they could just eat in the cafeteria and things like that. Probably have an extended lunchroom. 4th through 7th period, do some rotations there, going over some of those rotation things. 8th period, end the day with some celebrations where the teachers we could split the teachers up, escort them out to the buses, escort them out to the cars, give them a friendly goodbye. Probably would have students still go to their electives, so if they have band and music and all those kind of things, they could go there, start getting to know the music and band teachers. And then possibly even that night have an open house, and that's where we'd meet the teachers. And so instead of going in there and spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to open your locker and then finding out the lockers are high or low and unsure or whatever, and dealing with that with parents, that stuff would all be taken care of where they could actually meet the teachers and talk about what are some of the things going on in the school. They could talk about Power School, how do you get on as a parent, digital citizenship, things like that, that they could actually meet with teachers instead of just the normal, real quick, throw your supplies in there where they really don't get to meet the teachers. So kind of going on that, I kind of did this at one of my schools. Of course, it was not at 6th grade level. It was at the high school level where we had a 9th grade transition program where you kind of really pushed the kids getting involved and meeting some of the role models at the school. And I just really feel like what I observed this year with the first days of open house versus kind of what happened the first days of school, I really think this would be beneficial, especially with some of the anxiety and the mental health issues that we have coming in. So that is kind of my proposal.
So when
Any
you say,
question?
when you say rotations, are you talking about like a student would walk through their day with classrooms?
That would probably be one of the schedules, but rotations would be, where you'd have even like some of your 7th grade and 8th grade teachers maybe leading a rotation in the lunchroom. This is what our expectation is, the lunchroom is. So there'd be rotations like that. This is our expectation of when we're in the morning time, because there are certain expectations that we have, you know, where the 6th graders go in the morning and things like that. Some of them get there pretty early, and there's like 2 or 3 different areas that they can go, but it takes them sometimes a while to get that figured out, and because it's real said real fast in one quick meeting at the beginning of the year, this is where you go.
One thing I thought was, maybe it's included in one of the things you listed, but, you know, when people, some kids may not realize some of the activities, like the
Right.
sports. And so maybe, you know, just encourage, not that you sign up for anything, but just, you know, list out what's available and, you know, and how you get information when the season comes near and,
Yep, and that would be one, and really, there's a lot of different clubs that the kids can do.
yeah.
We do announce them over email a lot of times and stuff like that, but I still don't think sometimes they really understand everything that they can get involved in and how much fun it can be. But if you take time, I think they can. You know, you kind of have to promote that a little bit more and things like that.
How is the,
Oh, go ahead, Ben.
how is the orientation of the first day done now? How is it different than your proposal?
It's kind of a step-by-step process. In the springtime, I go over, I meet the 5th grade kids, so we kind of talk about a few things. And then that week, I want to say, or shortly after that, we have a 5th grade orientation night where the parents can come up to the middle school, and then we have a scavenger hunt for the kids while I talk to the parents. And then we have the open house in August, before school starts, where we have one team come like at 6 o'clock, and then one team comes at 7 o'clock.
They come over for a trip to.
Oh, yeah, they take a tour of the middle school
To
too.
tour the middle school in the spring.
How is that, when you have that orientation, you were telling Ben about, how is that, attended? Like, do you have every student show up, or 2 or 3, or how is it?
I will say, I can't give you exact numbers. I would say the 5th grade orientation night with parents and I'd probably maybe half the parents showed up. Open house, which is they just basically come in and leave their stuff and they can say hi to the teacher and open the lockers, kind of what they do. I would say a good chunk of them does. And it's pretty full because you do one half the hallway and it's about 100. I would say it's attended very well, but they spend a lot of time just basically opening up the lockers, putting their stuff in there, and by that time, it's time for the new group to come in. So I don't know that there's really a whole lot of, I think they meet their teacher, say hi, but that's about it.
And they're probably just meeting their homeroom teacher at that point, not maybe.
They can meet any of their teachers they want.
I liked in that, that mentoring, bringing in some of the older students and really pointing out who leaders are. Because I think as 6th graders, you're still trying to find who you are. And if you're not finding that group, it's sometimes easier to find the groups that are trying to recruit
That's correct.
students than the groups that, that could really use the kids. So I think the more positive role models they have coming in as a 6th grader. And I will have a 6th grader, so obviously this is my oldest will be in 6th grade, and yes, they're already talking about the big giant of middle school. But I think it's very important to have those role models in the upper class going into a new building, and they would know who to look for if they're struggling, or know who to seek out
Right.
for ideas or suggestions or support.
Yeah, I have no problem with anything about what can be done on the day. It's just our policy is pretty explicit that each year we set the number of days that our students will go to. And the only exception according to policy that we can make if we want is to let our high school seniors out so much before, the official last day. So I'm having trouble with it. I think it's great for seniors, but, our 7th and 8th graders deserve that day of school. That's a thought that I'm having as we go. This is the first time I've, been exposed to this.
I was wondering if it was a day extra for the 6th graders.
Well,
we used to go over, the fifth graders used to go over like at, I'm gonna say 1 o'clock and spend from 1 to 3 over at the middle school. I don't know what they did with, if they just, the teachers and they had somebody, I retired 8 years ago or 9, so, but that's what they used to do. They used to spend the afternoon at the middle school.
Sometimes the special education groups would have students that come over for the afternoon, and would do that multiple times. It would be 12 years or prior to me coming to the district if they did that with all of the fifth grade students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know the whole class went over on a bus, and so that's what they did. That's all I know that they used to do, but I haven't done it for 8 years, so I don't know.
I think it's a great idea, as long as we're not in violation of a policy that we've got. I think I'm on with you, the mental health, and Sue and I've had this discussion many times. The mental health, I think it just stresses these kids, and if they come in and they understand what's going on, that relieves some of that stress, because if you don't relieve some of that stress, like Sue says, they're going in another direction they probably shouldn't be going. So, I don't know how you handle the policy and make
Right.
that happen, but
Yeah, that's definitely the main question, I think, and Christy and I have talked a little bit about that too, just the level of communication and understanding that it would take. I think parents of 7th and 8th graders, 7th and 8th grade students, I think it's one thing to value a smooth transition for a 6th grader, it's another thing to think, what, my kid's gonna have a day less school to get this done? So that's one thing, and the policy thing is, it's a little bit of a concern. I think if we had an emergency, like one of our schools, whatever, a boiler blew up, so kids can't go to Irving today. Okay, well, that'd be one thing. We'd have school in our other buildings. I don't think we would have to worry about, it was an emergency, we couldn't help it. But it's something that we intentionally do. That's something I would want to look at more.
That was the first time I've heard the
Yeah.
presentation, I need some time to think on it.
Yeah, and that was the
Yeah,
goal
yeah,
tonight,
just
and
get-
Christy's here just to present to you, to get you thinking, to have you give her some feedbacks and things to think about. It's not on as an action item, so.
What, have you talked to any of your staff and faculty?
No, and I thought about it, but I just thought, I don't want to get anybody,
You have any idea or inkling, like what they might think
No.
about it?
I really think if I went in there and said, let's work on a 6th grade transition, they'd be 100% for it.
Okay.
I'm not gonna say 100%, let's go down.
No, wait, you just did. We have it on tape.
being videoed.
Maybe I can push those over. But no, I would think a high percentage that the staff would be in support. They really support kids and students and things like that, so.
Do you think your 6th grade kids and parents would come out for it if it were an extra day versus the first day?
I don't know. I know there are school districts that do that. They have an extra day. I think Des Moines does a summer day, and I've read up on some other places that kind of done an extra day in there, and I want to say, I can't give you numbers, but I think one Des Moines Times, they said about 50%. So I don't know exactly.
Any other questions for Mrs. Ellis? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Christy,
you.
appreciate it.
Great idea.
Yeah, great idea.
I'm having trouble with my technology too, so it's okay.
Definitely not
So
good now.
as a follow-up, what is the follow-up? Who addresses this, or is it
I think,
curriculum, or-
I do want the board to be in favor of them before, it's a big enough change. Christy and I talked about that early on, that I would anticipate wanting to bring it to the board for board approval. Christy and I will visit more and think about some things we heard from the board. I don't know, if we were using a board committee to bring it up through a committee, I suppose that would be curriculum.
Well, I'm not
although-
saying it needs to be, I'm
Yeah.
just trying to figure out what's the next
Yeah,
step.
I think
Okay.
we'll mull over what we just heard, go a little bit further and bring it back if that's something we wanna propose. I think one clear step, I need to have clarity about what is proper or allowable for us in terms of, can you just excuse 2 classes of kids on a day if you wanted to do that. Or if that's a, you know, a policy problem or a problem with the, you know, we would have the minimum hours covered, for the state still, but, you know.
Not in this game for minimums, we're in this game to get things done.
Oh,
So
I
I-
understand.
Okay, I mean, you
Yeah,
have had that conversation many times.
I do have a question, Art. So if we did it on a non-school day, like, I don't know when school starts next year, but say it starts on a Thursday, if we did it on a Wednesday and we provided transportation, I don't know if Des Moines schools provide transportation or parents had to drop them off.
I don't know.
I mean, I don't, is that an option either? I mean,
Oh, yeah, I mean, we could, there'd be an extra expense with transportation, but we could provide transportation, we could figure that out, we could,
some parents don't do it because they're going to work and they can't get them
Oh, yeah.
to school and then get them back home. So maybe if we,
you know, and I don't know
Just
if
a
we
thought.
would, I don't know if we would do it the day before the first day of school, because that's such, you know, right now our pre-service days for teachers
or
are pretty full, so you, I mean, you may be doing it a day the week before or
well, yeah,
something.
I'm just thinking the transportation part, cause a lot of parents say, well, I can't get off work at 3 to get them back home. So
Yeah.
could you provide transportation?
Yeah,
I mean,
I
most
have
sixth
not-
graders go home anyway and wait
Yeah.
for their parents to get home, right? You got a sixth grader, don't you?
Seventh. Sorry,
Seventh
Mom.
grade. Did yours go home off the bus and wait for you or somebody there?
Oh, he just comes to my office.
Oh.
I haven't talked to the transportation department yet, but we.
But I mean, just, that's just a thought, I mean,
There would probably be the added expense though for teachers and stuff, because that would not be part of their contract time, and so they're paying the teachers.
You know, unless it's a situation where you have plenty of contract days, and it is one of the middle
Yep.
school teachers' contract days, you know, then that's different than other buildings, but,
I don't know how that would
I
work.
mean, I think it's worth researching, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
talking further.
I'd be curious too, if you guys could reach out to some of the staff too and just get their feedback, cause obviously with a big change like this, you're gonna want buy-in from them.
Yeah,
I mean,
that
they're the
would
ones that are
probably take a
gonna,
lot more buy-in than the first day,
yeah.
coming in on a day that is not before the first day, first week of school.
Right.
so, there's some things to think about, and we can keep,
Yep.
we can keep working on it, we can look at the calendar, we can see what that day might be, you can start visiting with staff a little bit, and I understand why, I mean, I've seen this with different things in different buildings at times too. Sometimes you have an idea, and once you kind of put the idea out there or float it, then 10 different stories start. Oh, did you hear what they're doing? And so, I mean, I understand your hesitation in
Yeah.
going too far with that before it really had been vetted at all, so.
Because at the end of the year, kindergarten has a roundup, and the kindergartners don't come one day, you know, and then the new
We-
kindergartners come, so you could, you know, possibly do it at the end of the school year and not have sixth graders come one day, just like the kindergartners don't come one day at the end.
Trying to forget about that.
That'd be the only other.
I never remembered anything in any of my years at school over the summer. I can see that being a problem, trying to do it after the last year and trying to get them, remember how to go get around the school and the lockers and everything,
Yeah,
you know, 10 weeks later.
but that's,
Me
I mean,
now
that's what
it's a
they used to
week,
do.
but, you
Yeah,
know,
they
that-
did
At the
used
end
to
of the
do
school
that.
year, so, yeah.
Just a thought.
Okay.
All right, moving on to, thanks, Mrs. Ellis, I appreciate your presentation. Number 2, the 2021 high school course handbook. This will require board approval.
As always, I look through it and enjoy looking through it. I have no objection to it, but I can have to say I don't know much about it, you know, and all of that. The staff is prepared to that, high school administration, so I presume it's what they need.
If there were any questions that arose as you reviewed, we have Mr. Siebersma here, he can help answer questions.
Any questions from the board?
I think we do a great job.
I thought it was
of-
pretty straightforward, so.
Do a really good job of offering opportunities to kids in a lot of areas. Mr. Siebersma and I are talking a lot, again, about an area that the board, we've talked about, the career technical area. And I have a meeting scheduled with the DMAC president another week or so to talk about some opportunities. Mr. Siebersma is looking into some idea of some apprenticeship type relationships. So, you know, we'll continue to, nothing's ever written in stone, but I mean, this is obviously plan to do.
Is that what you're talking about? You sent us the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I did, that was at
Is that what you're talking about?
that'll be,
Part of it?
I'm sure, part of our
Oh, okay,
conversation,
good.
yeah,
Okay.
yep.
I'll move approval of the handbook.
I second it.
All right, motion to approve the 2020-2021 high school course handbook. Motion made by Ken, seconded by Lori. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, next is the 2021 student fees.
And I think the overview kind of gives you most of the information you need there. We're not recommending an increase in those fees, and John has the history there for you the last 6 years.
Can I ask a question real quick? I don't know if this is where I can ask it, but, so where's the break off when they get free and reduced lunches? Like 30,000 a year, what?
The fee waiver, do you know
Just
the number, Jonna?
Just curiosity.
How many are
No, like,
the dollar
What's-
amount?
like the dollar amount, like say the family has to be making under 30,000 a year.
Oh, I don't have that off the top
Okay.
of my, because
I
it goes
just-
by family count as well.
Oh, it goes
So,
family
like,
count too,
you know,
okay.
If you're a 3-member household, a 4-member, up to,
And is the fee waiver exactly the same levels as the free and reduced lunch? This is fee waiver versus reduced lunch. I think it's the same.
I think it's the same qualifications.
for those.
It's the
Though-
same.
Though, the fees themselves are either paid or not paid. I mean, it's fully paid. There's no partial waiver because they are free as well, the partial
Okay.
waiver,
Okay.
for the textbook fees.
Where's all this money go back into? Which
Goes
fund?
into the general fund, and if you look down below, the fees received through the years, I mean, we hit a high and now we're going down. We don't receive all the fees, we have a lot in collections
It's a
right now.
collection agency.
Like thousands, more than food service. So,
Do we have any luck collecting those, or?
not, the people that choose not to pay haven't paid for years.
Historian here. I mean, there was even like staff members weren't paying. I mean, it's like some people just kind of knew that we didn't go after you, so they just didn't pay. So it was a hard decision, but we did the collection agency to,
How many years
for
have we
those
been,
that could pay. would
so how
pay.
many years have we been doing that?
More than 5,
Yeah, I know we've used collections ever since I've been here.
Yeah.
Is there a, you just say for those that you know can pay, so is there a protocol on what ones you send to collections and what one you don't based on that?
What I did try to
So
encourage
like,
the free and reduced.
anybody that would fit into the free and reduced, parameters
Okay.
would not be charged.
They had paperwork they
But
fill out.
they,
Right,
yeah,
right.
but they might have stuff from way back, because,
So these are fees for people that are not on the
Right,
free and reduced, so
right.
just our general.
Mhm.
But some people that qualified don't fill out the
Don't
paperwork,
have
so you try to get them to fill out the paperwork,
Right.
so they get both the fee and the food.
So they have to fill out the free and reduced lunches and the book waiver fees, right? There's two
I'm
different,
not sure it's 122.
there's just a waiver, there's a, yeah.
Just a
choose
general
to
waiver.
Mhm. And,
does it take quite a while to get that back?
um,
I mean, we've been sitting on this a long time now.
there's some that owe quite a bit.
I didn't realize that.
Move to approve the 2020, 2021 student fees.
Second it.
Motion made by Ben to approve the 2021 student fees, seconded by Lori. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 7-0, motion carries. Right. Next would be the board curriculum committee report.
This was our meeting over a month ago, okay. So you might have to jump in and help me.
Yeah.
Annette presented a gorgeous rollout of like what computer science means It was a bit overwhelming. Is it up there? No.
No.
But it was a nice
just up.
rollout, and a lot of what we talked about is the changing of mentality that computer isn't just typewriting anymore. It's not just teaching the kids the typewriting, it's teaching them processes. So especially in the kindergarten through second grade, it's a lot of teaching them a process. And the same processes that we would teach them to stand up and get in line for the lunch, or, or something like that. So everything is getting the kids kind of brains wrapped around that, that it's a process. And so we looked at the different things that they do, and how we're taking some of like the math and the science and bringing it into more of the computer database, through programs and some games and stuff like that. We talked about how more of the core subject time is still, our teachers are still being trained, and, instead of math just being math and science just being science, how can we take subtraction and then put it into a computer science game, and they can learn that way too. So,
It's integrating some of it more in the curriculum, all the way through the curriculum. It's confusing the technology all the way through the curriculum. It's a lot of what they're doing.
And the district had a grant to jumpstart this last year. Computer science standards aren't mandated by the state at this point. It probably could be at some point in time, but it's a huge initiative of the governor and the Ready Iowa initiative, to make sure we have a very skilled workforce in the areas where the jobs are located. And so it's really that impetus of looking at how we're not talking simply coding, definitely not talking keyboarding, because that's a different skill. We're really just talking about problem solving and having kids think of things as systems and how things work together, the why behind some of the systems that are in our lives. So that was the part they took a look at, and through that grant last year, we now have 3 courses at the high school that are in place. The middle school finished mapping their processes through their computer science courses that they have as standalone. The elementary are just at the cusp. They'll be having additional code.org training at the end of the year for the teachers who haven't had it. And then there will be a team of teachers who have had that training already that can take a look and say, you know what, this is where this fits in right now. So it's not a standalone, it's not an add-on, it's just a different way of talking and having those activities for kids, kind of as that as-needed basis. But they will develop a scope and sequence, so it's not that one class or one grade in the district is getting a much heavier dose or opportunities than others. So. That second question there on the Iowa School Performance Profiles, typically those would come out in December. The state is behind in releasing those to districts. They were to be this week, and they've been pushed back even
I
another
was just gonna
week.
ask you, I remember those was coming out, yeah.
So
Just got an
that's,
email today.
So they're not out yet then?
no, it'll be next week when the districts have access, but they'll be embargoed and kept, so that some districts can take a look at those before they're released to the public, at the end of the month. But, those will be things to where each school, is identified kind of as a different point, of development. And it includes things like, where's your attendance at, what's your graduation rate, those conditions of learning questions, the safety, how kids feel safe in the schools is a part of that, and our academic achievement and growth. So those will be coming then to the next board curriculum subcommittee meeting too, and we'll be digging into those a little bit more.
When were those taken? When were those taken?
They're based off of the ISASP,
So it's-
our test from the spring, and then that'll be used as a part of this calculation in this broader report.
They're hoping to get it quicker next year.
This
Supposed to.
particular report typically comes out in December. I don't know if they'll change that, but the ISASP scores, they hope by May,
Yeah.
where this year we didn't get them until October, I think,
Okay.
this year. Mhm.
Any further discussion on that?
Think so.
Okay, we can move on to the special education head count there, or
Yep.
circlets.
I won't read this to you. I'll just mention a few highlights, and probably if you look at the chart page That's most instructive, the one that's in landscape. I think you've heard enough about special education, you know that there are different levels, level 1, level 2, level 3. Eligible individuals are categorized in one of those 3 levels. There's a matrix that the Area Education Agency uses to help set those levels. So a level 1 special education student, what this report is about is our weighted count, or child count. And we say weighted count because a general education student is weighted at 1. A level 1 special education student is weighted at 1.72. So you get that additional weighting, those additional dollars to help pay for the additional services that student needs. A level 2 special education student is weighted at 2.21, and a level 3 special education student is weighted at 3.74. And a general education student is roughly $6,800. So if you're going to take and figure out the level of funding for an eligible individual, then you would take that 6,800 times that weighted number. As we know, the cost of educating kids who have intense needs is not covered by that additional weighting. I think Ron has described it to you as an underfunded mandate, where originally the federal government said they would pay up to 40% of that cost. I don't think they've ever exceeded 17% in what they've given to schools for that. We have added, you know, just looking at the last 5 years, we've added 140 eligible individuals, so 140 more special education students to take us to 431 right now, and it was 291 5 years ago. We also have then the percentage of special needs students that make up our student enrollment has increased correspondingly too. We're at 12.5%, which is closer to kind of a national number, 12-13% of students nationally. The last time I checked the number, that was right in the ballpark of a national number. When I came here, it was, you know, it was much lower, 8.4% 5 years ago. The largest growth in numbers is in level 1 students. A level 1 student is a student that has an academic goal, usually just one. They may be level 1 and have a couple, but for example, they have a reading goal. They're not reading at grade level. They're getting some specially designed instruction. They're getting some extra doses of reading. And the goal with special education students is always to get them staffed out. You know, get them caught up, staff them out. The level 2 students, you know, more intense needs, you probably would see several goal areas. You may see a behavioral goal. Level 3, you could be seeing some medically fragile students in there for sure. You could see some more intense behavior needs as well as academic goals. So as the levels go up, so do the needs, so do the resources. Our special education deficit last year at $694,000 is actually pretty modest for a school our size. I know a school in eastern Iowa, almost exactly the same size, $3 million special ed deficit. Urbandale, who's in our comparables, I believe is around $1 million, which would be a very typical number for us. So we try to watch that because there's a feeling with some people that special education, it's not real money, it's kind of a blank check, but it is a general fund expenditure, and you do have some ability to levy back that special ed deficit the following year. You've already spent that money, but it depends on your cash reserve levy limit, which I think, Jonna, for us next year is around $350,000.
Cash reserve, right.
Okay, so this becomes part of your cash reserve total if you levy that special ed deficit. So, you know, right now, $694,000 deficit, we couldn't levy it all if we wanted to. So we are spending more than our funding, but, you know, we have a responsibility to provide free and appropriate education, FAPE. We also have a responsibility to have entitled individuals in the least restrictive environment. So there are a lot of federal requirements with this.
Art, do you see a lot of, like, like level twos jump to level threes, or level ones jump to level twos? Or is
There-
it just,
Yeah, there are changes.
you have some changes in there?
That happens year to year. And there is a matrix. I haven't worked directly with this very much for a few years, but that weighting process is done cooperatively with the area education agency. They have a matrix they use. It depends on how much specially designed instruction that student is getting in a day,
So
how
is-
much associate support they have, things like that.
Or normally the level threes have to have a one-on-one associate?
We don't usually use the one-on-one terminology or model exactly. We talk about associate support, but they would have, more minutes of associate support, meaning that, there definitely are level 3 students, probably the majority of them, that the whole time they're in our walls, in our schools, they're having some extra help with associate. So that's a fair statement, even though we don't say one-to-one because we try to cross-train staff.
Right.
You know, and lots of times more than one person will work and support a student. But the concept you're talking about holds true.
So those bolded numbers under 2019, 2020, 34 and 61.9, that's how many staff are required? Or is
Correct.
that how many we have?
That's how many we have. So you can see both the number of staff and associates, the FTE, the full-time equivalency, has gone up. We did have, if you would look back, a couple of years, in 2017-18, we had 28 teachers. We had that time period where we had declining enrollment a couple of years in a row, and we did a little bit of cutting by attrition. We didn't cut staff, but we had some people who left. We didn't refill every position. That included 2 special education teachers. And then the next year, we hired them back, and the following year we added more. So, it really does depend on the number of kids, as you were saying, having enough staff to serve them.
Are there level threes in all buildings?
We have level 3 programs in 2 of our elementary schools, at Emerson and at Loring Mills Wilder, and in our middle school and high school.
That's the thing that jumped at me was the 13, the increase of 13 was level 3.
Yeah.
And I know we follow their plans, and so, we have it staffed accordingly, but I would say that's a big jump.
It is, yeah, huge percentage increase, and as we were saying, serving those kids appropriately, they need a lot of support, so. So this is here for your information. I mean, it's really cut and dry in terms of the numbers are what they are, and we get the funding that goes with the numbers. But I think this is a topic that it's really good for board members to have an in-depth understanding of, in terms of what it takes to serve all our kids, so.
And these are our certified numbers for this year, right?
Correct.
Any other questions on this? Okay. We'll move on to letter E, finance. Number 1, we have the Pearl. This would require board approval. It's for the vote.
On March 3rd.
Spring. March. Not quite spring.
Close, yeah.
Close. And this is not a new tax. It would just be
It is a new tax.
It's not an
for us.
increase.
not a new tax increase,
It's
sorry.
Yeah, and this is the same, public education recreation levy that we've talked about. And the allowed purposes are for playgrounds, sometimes it's called the playground levy, playgrounds, and then community education. And there's a maximum of 13.5 cents per thousand that goes with this levy. The board could revisit that every budget year. The board could decide how much you were gonna levy, but 13.5 cents would be the maximum. We, as Rob was just saying, don't anticipate this would be any tax increase. Our tax levy went down 80 cents this year, and we don't think we're gonna be in a position where we need to increase taxes. So we could put this levy in. What it does is establish a sinking fund for us, basically, some designated money for playgrounds and public education just for that purpose. And I don't know if you want to add anything else, Jonna, but
And the community ed. Community ed is something that I think will evolve over time. I don't know that we have a plan for that, but I think that there's a lot of opportunity there that could really be neat for our community.
Just get, before, as this comes about, we had talked about putting out some educational material. I mean, do you think it would be wise to come up with a proposed plan for the community education aspect of it, since we're asking voters to vote on it, instead of saying we really don't know what we're gonna do with it? And maybe that would be wise to put as part of the overall educational packet on it and identify what we may do with it.
Or
the
even just
opportunities.
historically what we've spent, I mean, that's the easy way of putting it in perspective, I think, is how much in the last 10 years we've spent on things that we could use this fund for.
yeah.
'Cause
Yeah,
it's
the
not-
playground piece of it's definitely easier.
Yeah.
You're right. I think we could, and I don't know, I don't have a definite plan yet. I don't know, maybe we could have before March 3rd, but at the very least, I would think we could put ideas of how we could use it. John has mentioned West Des Moines before as a district that has had this since 1974 or something. You know, maybe we could visit with folks there too about how they've used it, other districts who have it on the community ed side.
And as far as
Kind
that-
of more of like a summary sheet of says,
Yeah.
this is what it is, this is why
Yeah.
we're proposing
Yeah.
it. Here's what, here's similar things that we've spent over the last 10 years. Here's possible things we would consider using it for going forward.
Right.
Just to educate them so they can make their judgment on whether they wanna vote for it or not.
Yeah, right, I'm not saying we have to have a definitive plan if we chose a community ed route, just maybe some general ideas
Yeah.
along with the,
Yeah.
you know.
I think that'd be good to have like something
Yeah.
electronic you can
Yeah, I
send
think
all.
so too.
I think we have to do this, because this is, as far as we know so far, a single issue election. Just this thing, as far as we know.
This one in there.
Revenue purpose.
But
Two, yeah.
county doesn't want anything, or city,
I
I'm not aware of
requested
anything.
information, I haven't heard
Got
anything
that.
on that then.
So one of the aspects when we have this, I've been through this before, is we have to get some people to come vote for it.
Yeah.
We are gonna have people that go vote against everything.
Right.
I mean, that's fine, that's part of life. But, so we do have to get it out to our PTAs, and get people to actually go vote.
That's good to get it out to the PTOs. Yeah.
And the original, as we started looking at this and as I, researched it, it just seemed like it was very logical for us, and just as a single issue, the playgrounds, because we have spent lots and lots of money on playgrounds in the last 5 years. That's where I came about, that it wouldn't have to be PTOs, it wouldn't have to be, bond issues, it could be something that we save up for. But again, the opportunity for a community ed piece that we don't really know what it looks like, but could be really a neat.
I was just thinking maybe the communication committee could kind of come up with a strategy, which I think is you and me, so trying to figure out who's
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just
Okay,
kind of come up
just a
with something,
one-page.
even if it's we share what we are, like maybe split up, different PTOs and,
Yeah. I agree.
put
I'm
something
happy
on
to
our
get the
website.
ball rolling, so what motion do we need to do first?
Approve this resolution that we have, approve the resolution directing the county auditor to call an election to submit the question of levying a voter-approved public education and recreational property tax.
I will move it in the verbiage that Art just gave us.
I'll second that.
All right. Ken made the motion to approve that language that Art gave us.
We have,
All right,
we're good.
We're
That
good.
goes in
Seconded
it now, what
by
I said, yeah.
Carolyn. Any further discussion on that? All right, nothing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Second, or opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. And then the second one right behind that is the approval of the revenue purpose statement. This
Since
is-
we're doing one, we might as well do both, that are both, things that the school district, specifically our school district issues, not city, not county, anything else. This one just allows us, to say, this is what we will spend the voters would have to approve that this is what the district would spend their sales tax money on. So,
In our last revenue purpose statement, if I remember right, John, it was maybe 2008, it was approved. And since then, there have been some other allowable expenditures, like some of the security, technology,
DMAC, or a community
Career
college
Academy.
joint venture type thing as well.
This is an easier one to publicize, because this taxation thing has allowed us to do, and we can list a lot of things that allowed us to do. So that's an easier one for people to understand.
And this one is not a levy, it's just how can we spend the
Yeah,
sales
it's
tax money we
sales,
bring in.
we still gotta do it, yeah.
That just needs to be clear.
Yeah,
Just needs to be clear.
Happy to carry on. What motion do we need here?
same.
Board approval of the resolution directing the county auditor to order
Make
an
it
election on the
step.
revenue purpose statement to authorize expenditures from revenue received from the state secure and advanced vision for education fund, and ordering publication of a notice to call an election March 3rd, 2020.
I think you know what I'm gonna say. I move that we move forward with this with the verbiage that Art has just read us.
Second.
Motion made by Ken, seconded by Ben. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? What's that?
I do have one thing. So,
Who's got a question?
a little late, but I'm here. So, Carolyn, you and I are going to find a time and work on both of these and how to write up a page to help communicate better.
Right.
Okay?
And John,
And how, like whether it's like, obviously,
Through
websites, go to PTO, have it.
if you have questions, some of those like that, historical
Instagram,
expenditures or all that kind of thing, Jonna would be a great resource. She,
And I have some information from other districts when they put this through for RPS. Finding that the PEARL is much more specific to a community, that how do we feel we wanna spend it, other districts do it their own way, so.
I think PTOs would be a great idea.
Any further discussion? Did that vote squeak out or not? We're good.
I think we all said aye.
We're good.
I'm gonna asterisk by it.
Come on, Sue.
herding cats.
All right, number 3 is the 2021 budget development.
Getting our puzzle pieces together, we received our valuation report, which was an increase, which is good, of 4.51%. But what's interesting is our tax, or the TIF went down, and that's the first time that's went down since it's gone up, right? So something has fallen off that was a TIF way back in 2002. So,
And TIF, just for me, that's tax increment financing. And it's employed by cities to help encourage growth. All of our newer buildings in the north side of town, there's a good chance they have been in a TIF district. And until recently, Indianola has not done much with residential TIF. They do have some residential TIF too, where they step down the taxes over 5 years, or I should say increase the taxes over 5 years. And what a city will do is, they will use the money there, they'll forgive the taxes for, say, a new business coming in, and they'll use the money for infrastructure improvements. So taxing entities like us, the school district, we don't get the increased tax revenue on that new building as long as it's TIFed. But then eventually it comes off the TIF rolls, and we don't get fewer taxes, we just don't get the taxes on the improvements that are made while they're TIFed. So,
And TIF is done by districts, and I think there's at least 5 different ones in town, so one probably rolled off
Yeah,
after the
exactly.
5 or 10 years.
so anyway, that's kind of a long answer, but we like it when the TIF number goes down, so.
and we like it when the taxable valuation goes up. So this is, as we wait now, as a 1% budget guarantee, well, the documents haven't come out yet to work on the budget, but they should be coming, and that's the next step in next meetings that we have. We'll talk more budget. So this is just another piece to that.
Any further discussion on number 3 there? Moving on to number 4, 2021 modified supplemental amount request for dropout and at risk.
Okay, you'll see that we have 6 different areas where we utilize our at-risk funds. We have over $1 million in at-risk. The 6 different areas are what you see up there. Our our academic supports, the EPIC, and then the online learning. That's kind of a morphing program right now. Our school liaison, our school resource officer, the student assistants. Our academic supports also is part of our guidance counselors. Part of their salary gets paid out of at-risk because what they're doing is assisting at-risk students. So we request this from the state, and then we are able to get that in allowable growth and can spend it as we see fit within these programs. So.
John and Annette have been working very hard on this budget and application, and this is one of those deals too. You want to try to get the maximum you can, because we're going to have those costs. You know, for us, it's almost all direct staff cost. You know, people working, you know, try to provide additional support to those students.
So the funds that come in can go to those areas then?
Yep, the areas that the board sees fit, which have been this in the past. Again, you can see that it's just over $1.74 million, I believe is what our.
Do we have this money now, or we just applied for
We're
it?
requesting for, this is, you're requesting for that.
And when do we find that out?
Let's make a motion to.
So that number two, the EPIC, the online learning, when should we start to see like our first, like true measure of how that program's doing and stuff?
We can get a report together on that in terms of number of credits attained and some of those things.
Number of students enrolled,
Is there a lot enrolled in it?
I think we had about 60 that were involved in at some point at semester time when they were looking at that.
And as this year it's kind of deceiving because it's new. So I think in years to come, we'll definitely put something together to show more discreetly what is there and who's taking what. I think this year is just kind of tough because we're kind of back and forth with a couple different programs right now.
So when do we find out if we get this?
It'll go through the SBRC at their next meeting, I think in March probably. We submit this by the 15th, so it'll go in tomorrow if you approve it. And usually, it just is an automatic.
Oh,
Like,
it
has
is.
to go,
Oh.
typically it's an automatic.
It's not like they're giving us that money, we just have the ability to
We
spend
have
it.
this- Yep, and then.
So
yeah.
it's not like a check.
Right, but I mean, we have that, it's sitting there, we can use.
It's telling us how we can.
But we don't, you don't get denied. I mean,
Typically, I don't anticipate that ever.
There is spending authority with it.
Right.
You know, we're talking about the allowable growth. That's the real thing. It depends. I mean, I've been at districts where it was very tough to get everything approved that you thought should go into at-risk. No, we've been pretty successful here.
And what's happened in the last 2 years, it is a board-directed program. It's not, the state does not say, you don't get this, and you don't get the EPIC, and you don't get the school resource officer. It has become how the board directs it to be.
Okay, so maybe that's a change.
So are we approving that worksheet or approving an amount?
Approving the $1,074,536.
Joan, how do we come up with the number, the 353? Is that when we take how many students, the enrolled students in the budget year identified as returning dropouts or potential dropouts?
Annette and I worked with that. I'll let Annette.
So the state has a definition of what they say is a student who's at risk or a returning dropout, and there's some categories in there such as if they have a truancy concerns, attendance concerns, are they failing multiple subjects, and so let's say they're not involved in extracurricular activities. Another one was if they are expressing that they are not connected to school. Some of those things are hard to measure, so our two at-risk coordinators at the secondary and elementary level took a look at those and the data pulls that we have, either through our early warning systems, through our FAST data that we look for reading and math, and tried to reconcile those numbers. The one piece that was difficult was, out of that number, kids could be served in multiple areas out of the 6 that we have listed. And so it wasn't a finite, here's the black and white number, but that was our best estimate, trying to stay true to what the state was saying is your definition.
Are any of those measures looking at mental health?
In terms of,
When you looked at attendance and truancy and
cases, so adverse childhood experiences.
Part of that was whether they were speaking with the counselors
Okay.
for the number of students that they might be serving, because I believe it's half of the counselors' salaries
Sorry, in the high school.
at the high school level is paid out of that, so.
Thanks.
All right, you're up, Ken.
Anybody?
Okay, I will move approval
We gotta let some
of the modified allowable growth dropout prevention application for the
I'll
amount
second.
requested.
Okay, motion made by Carolyn,
I'll
seconded
second.
by Donna. Any further discussion by the board? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Number 5 is SBRC application for special education admin costs.
So we have a student at Woodward Granger that goes to Grandwood, which is a program, a special ed, specifically special ed program there. So we transport this child up and back every day. Part of the, because they are a program, a special ed facility that's approved by the state, we can request our little bit of allowable growth. Again, we're nickel and diming, but it's $2,000 that we wouldn't have to spend, right? So we get that allowable growth then to help offset the cost, because obviously transporting that student up there and the services that he receives are expensive. So this, a little bit helps.
So he lives here in Inland, we transport him up there.
What is, do you have any idea what the total cost is?
It depends, because it shifts. I think we got the second quarter billing just recently, and it was like 13,000 for the quarter.
Sure.
So, and that's just one point. Then there's two different bills we get from them. One of them has all their admin costs, which they split out, still is a special ed cost for us, so.
Okay, I'm gonna move approval of the SBRC amount of $25,82.69.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Carolyn, seconded by Donna. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have the board finance committee meeting report.
That's been
Everybody
a
wants to
long
do that?
time ago. I can jump in. We did talk already about the first one. Right?
Talking about the Petaluma City budgets.
Yeah. Okay, and I was gonna laugh because it's like, I can't quite remember, but this EMC thing seems, it's interesting. So I'm gonna let you explain that, just 'cause.
And we can explain that when we get down further, or I can explain it now. It's
Whatever, yeah.
it's a cost shift, basically, from the general fund to the management fund. And the estimate that they talked to us about, without the HVAC systems, which we would be interested in putting HVAC coverage in there, and technology. I've talked to, Ray was in on this, because we can utilize our staff at $50 an hour to repair, and then we get those funds back. The goal that I see is, if our premium is $250, that my goal is $250, because I want it to be an even shift, right? Of course, then we may not get that full, 100%, but I guess we can do it this year, and if it's not what we think it is, we can cancel it. It's a year-to-year type thing, but we've talked about it in the past, and it was very cumbersome, the processing was cumbersome, I would say. Now, it's much more streamlined. We have processes in place within our tech system, within our facility system, when somebody needs something done, they do a tech ticket or a work order ticket for our staff. Within that, you can identify, it took me 45 minutes to do that. So we would have the documentation they would need without having to reinvent the wheel. So it seems like we have what it takes to do this and to be efficient with this. So we're interested in trying it out to see if it does work.
And the advantage of it is that it shifts the fund
from the.
Pay for it from
the general
management.
Or physical plant
You
to,
buy the policy for the
Yeah.
amount that we're spending, it's like $250,000. That can be paid for, that premium out of the management fund.
right,
Okay. And then what they reimburse us goes into the general fund.
it's offsetting the general
So,
expense, yeah.
Offset, whatever the term should be, I don't wanna say that wrong. So it's just a way to increase our general fund, which is the one that we educate students out of. So. I so move.
Wait, this is not a move,
Oh.
because this is just, we will be getting to that, but this is just the minutes.
That
I
was the
believe.
minutes, which
Yeah.
leads you into the next item,
Which is that,
which
right?
is this, yeah.
Motion made by
Okay.
Ken to approve,
Second it.
seconded by Lori. And, any further discussion, everyone?
I think we did, well, no, how many companies do this, or how many districts, I mean,
Schools?
I mean, enough?
Oh, yeah, they,
Yeah,
some of them have been doing it for almost 20 years.
right,
Um,
cause I remember I was kinda like, this sounds
that-
really
and I
strange.
had-
Yeah, this is not a
I
fly-by-night.
was skeptical.
This has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And what happens sometimes is districts will, it is one that they will move in and out of. You know, for example, that they will tell you this will cover pretty much anything that plugs in. You know, so if you know that you have, you know, things that have gone unaddressed for a while, you know, maintenance needs, whatever, it might be a good time to jump in. Or if you have, now that they've added HVAC, if you have all of these separate, you know, the work we've done the last 5 years, all these different motors and fans all
Within the
throughout
geothermal,
these
yeah.
buildings, with the geothermal buildings, makes a lot of sense. So, yeah, I think we definitely have the number of devices and HVAC things, I mean.
Are we going
I
for
think
all
I'll
the
pay.
items on the
Yeah, I was gonna
list?
say,
Well, we
Or
have to
we-
give, now, once the board approves this, then we go to the application process, and it's probably
Okay.
15 pages long, isn't it? Or so, that then we'll give them the information we need,
Mhm.
or they need for them to cover that. And then,
Okay,
you know, I don't know if we can be up and running by the February, I mean, it doesn't have to be a July 1st
Yeah.
start, we can do it February
Yeah.
1st if we can get
I
it.
just see some of the.
So is
items
that
on the
250,000, John, is a ballpark depending on what you include or how many devices you have or whatever?
And really, they estimated it, and I said we couldn't hold him to that, and he, you know, but I just said, we just need to know what a number is, and our management
Yeah.
fund can afford that at this
Yeah.
time.
So would we come back to the board once we have the actual quote, or not?
Well, it'll be a bill, so it'll come through as a vendor bill, probably. I mean,
This
this
would
is
be
just to
appropriate.
participate.
Yeah, go ahead.
The one thing that's an interesting piece that Ray and I have talked about is copiers. So everything is covered under copiers except paper and staples. So toner.
Even toner. Toner is a repairable,
Wow.
not mine, but.
Right, right. So, we're in the midst of getting getting new copiers,
But printers are not covered.
but printers are not covered unless you call it.
On the toner.
unless they're-
And I think you should have me change the toner, because it probably would take me an hour, and you could build the hour too.
They do watch that, and then they say, if you have somebody inept doing it, you need to change it.
so like on security, does that cover like the cameras are installed in the schools and that kind of stuff?
And even on the buses, so even though the buses don't plug in, the cameras on the buses would be covered. So,
So will they cover as we add, like,
As
the
we add.
cameras at the high school and it will
Well,
cover
it's
as we
repair,
add?
it's not.
it's not
No,
install,
but
it's repair.
Right,
If something
but I
would
mean-
break, some kid throw a ball or be stupid and it covers the repair of it.
Yeah,
And, like, I mean, there's a way to get some of this list of things into teachers and staff members' hand, cause I'm assuming a lot of them, like at Irving, they would go and just purchase something themselves, you know, cause it was fast to get it themselves, and they just buy something themselves, so.
yeah, and so it has to be repairs, you know, so.
Yeah, I hope that they, like, I'd like them to utilize this as much as possible.
Well, that's our goal, and,
Okay.
and we will, educate our facilities guys, because I see a lot of things that this could be, because we do have a lot that they can repair themselves, within the district without having to go out and get a third party to fix them, so. Printers are on there though, right? See that?
I was gonna say printers
Printers are
are,
on there for hardware repair.
oh, hardware, okay.
Not toner though. It's just a fine line between printers and copiers.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to remember this again, so we can have our people fix it and
And charge them.
charge it, we can have someone else come in, or do they tell us who can come in?
No, that's what it used to be, and that's why I was not for it. So now it is whoever we use as a vendor, we would just bill it.
And then, is there any reason to be concerned, like our approval would be contingent on it not going above? Because I mean, if that's an estimate, what if it's 300,000 or 325, or, you know what
Well,
I mean?
and it will be higher than that because we don't have HVAC in there, and the HVAC pieces are higher. Because it's a purchase service, it isn't required to do that, but we would, you know, and if you wanna go higher, or just say participate at a certain dollar amount, or we could come back. I mean, I don't know how long it will take them to process it once we get our information into them.
So what was the 250,000? That was just like a
That
number
was
he
their
threw out?
ballpark that,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, where I'm at on this one, because it is tricky, and I do wanna see us give the ability, you know, pass resolutions they can apply. John, as she's researched it, said, you know, this fee's ballpark 250,000, I can see where we can use the 250,000. So it could be 275 or 300. If John can still see how we can make that match, I'm still happy with it. But I think I'm happy letting it go without a definite amount, because I know if there's something weird, John will bring it back to us, okay? And we still have to approve the bill when it comes, so.
I guess where I just kind of like, do we feel, I mean, we want to use what we have. We don't want to go spend 275,000 and have 175,000 of bills. I mean, have we done due diligence enough to kind of understand, like, because I think it'd probably be fairly hard to get to, because I'm not sure that we keep track of stuff that way. But, you know, like, what would be our estimate with costs over the last couple of years of things that would fall under this, that we know that's real similar to what we've had in the past?
Well, good question. I think that part of it, you know, as we look at our aging system, so Wilder is geothermal, and each pump, just the part, if they get a pump that goes bad, that's between, I think it's under $1,000. But then they have to go in, they have to replace it. Our guys have been able to replace those. So that would be efficient in that respect. The copiers, I think, are gonna be a big one, even though I think it's gonna be interesting.
Have we been, are we able to estimate that? That's where I'm getting at.
With the copiers at least.
Well, I mean, but
For the other
For the
things.
all
other
the stuff,
I mean,
you know,
I don't-
do we think we're gonna?
You're saying, are we
I
gonna,
hate to say that we spend 250,000 and we come up with $150,000 worth of reimbursements. It's like, well, that wasn't really probably worth it.
Well, that, and again, you know, we look at the different costs that we haven't kept track of it like this.
Right, I get
But I
that.
mean, when you look at what we spend in repairs, both in physical plant and equipment, even food service, the dollar amount is high. I can't tell you the exact amount though. Because we're either buying these parts or having them repaired. We just did an overhaul, and I keep thinking of all the things that we've done, and it's like, oh, we could put that through, you know. But we had to do something at one of the chillers, and that was $60,000. So, you know, those big pieces will help with that cost.
are you foreseeing some big pieces coming down the road?
What that Bernie was talking, there was a couple of things that were, that I said, don't do that until we get if
The
we do
dryers,
this.
the washer and dryers?
Washer and dryers,
I know that's
you
huge,
know,
that's
like-
a,
Geothermal at Wilder could be
Could be,
I mean,
because
it's, what,
there's like
11 years old now?
Mhm.
I mean, it's
Or 12, yeah.
12 years old.
So, I mean,
Maybe
but
not this year.
that's where I'm saying, if it is not a go, we would cancel it. I mean, this would be a February to June, and then we would re-up in
Oh.
July.
so we
it's not
can,
a
so it's only a
250
few
right
months,
now.
it's not a
Right now,
year
it's kind of a
contract.
test drive.
So it's 250 for that month?
No, it's 250 for a year, this would be prorated, so.
If I recall correctly too, stop me if I'm wrong, John, but I think when we were meeting, the insurance company, which I thought was kind of odd, said, you know, the goal really is for you to spend as much as you can, and that they would reach out to us if we weren't.
If the spend wasn't
So,
where they
so
thought
if
it
it wasn't
was.
where, yeah, if they thought, you know, we weren't getting, I think they said like at least 80%.
That's what they usually consider successful if you recoup 80%.
Right, so then they were saying, you know, we'll keep an eye on it.
So they were
Tell you,
using
this
that
is-
as a
This is what
selling
other
point.
schools are doing.
Yeah.
You're not, let's get you going on it.
I'm guessing if we do this, we would do this program, we would start tracking some of that stuff. We'd have to track it because
Yeah.
we're spending it, so we'd kind of know then the next 6 months what it's gonna, what
They
we're gonna
would
face.
then have a report that they would show, this is what you've submitted, and this is what your premium was, so.
And we kind of know through Bernie that something's coming up that's gonna happen, that we know is on the, just like the boiler, we know that was on the verge of what, how many years we sat and waited on it. I mean, so we're gonna know some of that stuff's coming up then.
I know I asked this question and you answered it and I can't remember the answer. If I'm the insurance company, why am I doing this? What's my gain on this?
Well, I think that their gain is, if that 20%, that's where they make their money, is the 20%.
If you don't spend it all.
If you don't spend it all.
You get close,
But
but you don't spend it all.
Again, the goal was, they're calling you and saying, okay, here's what you're using it to utilizing it to the maximum, because you wouldn't do it again if that wasn't the case, so.
Well, if you go above it, they'll wanna change your premium probably.
And these repairs or fixes, it's dependent on us as a district deciding we need this fixed. It's not like we mail it into them or call it into them, they come out and appraise it or
We get
whatever.
choose our vendors to, yeah.
Is this the only product they sell?
Well, the company, EMC is
Oh.
our blanket company. This company is, it's called SU.
Specialty underwriters.
Specialty underwriters. And they, this is their niche,
Okay.
but we don't use them for anything, we wouldn't use them for anything but this program.
I'm kinda glad it's only part of a year, so we can see what happens.
I know.
I'm skeptical, because I just feel like, you know, someone makes money off this, otherwise they wouldn't do it.
I know.
And so it's kind of like, as long as we can get something out of it that we're happy with, I just don't want to contribute to their profits.
I think the insurance companies, they're kind of banking on the fact that it's attractive enough to cost shift and benefit your general fund.
We've got
It
more
is-
stability, you've got more budgeting, or, you know, I mean, if you've got, right, I mean, if you're paying $250,000 and you know that it's $250,000, if you have a year where it's $300 or $350, you don't pay it, right?
You pay the $250,
pay
and
the
then,
$250.
and then they'd say, oh, by the way, next year you.
The following
Yeah,
year, they would
but
increase
you've got
your premiums.
stability of cash
Yeah.
flow, you've got more stability of cash flow,
Right, right.
yeah, okay. I'm still skeptical.
Motion was made by Ken. Any further?
Second by Lori.
Seconded by,
I just think we have the option, if in the 6 months you come back and say, hey, this is not working,
Yeah.
then we're gonna know. I mean, I think Jonna knows enough, what we're doing is to bring it back to us and tell us if it's not working or not. Or we could have something that's gonna cost us $180,000 to fix in the next.
Yeah.
any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
What's the date is the-
And, sorry, I'm out. Facilities project update number 8.
This really isn't changing a whole lot meeting to meeting, you're noticing. We don't have a lot of new things going on. Are still working through the process on the concrete at Lori Hills Wilder playground. Concrete's been replaced, now it's just a little bit of squabbling over who's really responsible. Looking ahead at some summer roofing, still working on quotes and plans for additional security cameras, high school, middle school. And then the biggest project of the summer will be the turf and track at the stadium.
Do we know when we'll put the security cameras up? Or got a budget, or price yet?
Ray, do you know if we do that, if we're making a movement towards the middle school as well, will they give us a break on our,
We're at least meeting with the vendor.
will they give us a break at all because of doing so many at once?
I'm sure they will. They've actually, I mean, even at the high school, we looked at that in phases, and there was a break when we just did the whole thing at once.
Okay.
For the high school security, are we adding to the already system we have there? We're not getting rid of a system and bringing in a whole new system, we're just adding to it.
They're going down the
As far
hallways,
as far
right?
as cameras go.
Because somebody had approached me and said, we just put security in the high school, are you getting away from that whole program and doing a whole new one? And I was like,
We'll be looking at, actually, we'll be looking at changing the software we're using.
okay,
But we are keeping the same cameras.
okay, and we're just adding a few more cameras, right?
How many more are we adding?
Oh, number.
Ballpark.
Was it down each
Jeff,
hallway?
Do you remember, Jeff? I'd say at least 60 basically. I haven't
At
looked
least
at
what?
that, At least 60, I'd say.
At least
I
60,
haven't,
okay, it's a
I
big
haven't looked
deal.
at that quote in a while, to be honest.
That's
I
fine.
mean, you'd hate to ballpark it, even if you just have.
So is that going down each hallway? Isn't that what you,
It'll cover the entire building.
the whole building?
I don't think there was anything not covered, was there, Jeff? I think that covered the entire building, right? I don't think there was anything that wasn't covered.
The majority of them.
Is there anything out in the parking lots?
No,
Is that,
parking was-
that'll stay the same,
Parking was pretty well.
Parking's in good
Okay.
shape.
They're covered pretty well, and that'll be on the same,
same
all same
system?
system. Yep.
All same system, okay.
Cool.
All right. Moving on, letter F, superintendent.
Yep. We've got board policy committee report and the different policies listed there that we looked at. We'll have first reading of those tonight, and then also we have second reading of those we had last month. And there were a couple of things with the second reading. We can do the first reading first, and then a couple of things I want to mention on those policies we've dealt with last month. Sue had a question I want to get back on, and then there was one sentence that we added to the seatbelt policy, but I'll hold off on that until we do our first reading of all these. Ken or Ben, I don't know, do you want to, is there anything about these
I'm
first
just saying,
reading
our
policies?
long-range needs assessments stayed pretty much the same. We had a good discussion about how that ties into strategic planning. Board of Directors conflict of interest, it was just basically some grammar things changing. Board of Directors conflict of interest, pretty much stayed the same. You see one little change there. Ad hoc committees stayed the same, but we did have a nice discussion because it was about the committees were adding, probably aren't ad hoc committees, more standing committees
Yeah.
in that regard. We just want to make sure people understood that. Public hearing legally stays the same as it is. That's one, really, we're taking out of state law on that one. Trying to find another way to have public input during a meeting on a subject. It's not quite a public hearing, a legal public hearing. Problem with a public hearing, they're required by certain things, and it's a 10-day notice, paying to publish it in the newspaper and all of that. But there might be other times, that's just for the future to figure out something. Class or student gifts stays I don't think we changed anything there. Stayed the same. The open nights stayed there. We did add the activities director as responsible too, it was just principals. But our question came up when we were there was, Art, you're gonna check in, is there such a thing happening as voluntary practices? We wanted that,
I don't have.
because that's against the
yeah.
policy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's, something I need to follow up on. I
Yeah,
don't know.
everything's done at 6 o'clock. There's no such thing as voluntary practices,
Yep.
according to this policy. So somebody said there might be, so we want that checked into.
Yep.
What do you mean, run that just on Wednesday nights?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Wednesday night's open. There's no voluntary practices for anything. That's what the policy says. No students in the building after 6.
On Wednesday nights?
Yeah, that's the policy. Don't know if it's being followed or anything, but that's the way it's always been. Because there is no such thing as voluntary. You know, every parent thinks their kid will, not succeed if they don't go for it. Goals and objectives of educational program, or there, anything change on that, Art? I asked you to share with Annette and,
very little. There just was a couple of strike-throughs where current practice were really, for example, on curriculum development, 602.1, the third bullet from the bottom, that parental involvement really isn't happening in that part of the process. And there's similarly on 602.2 in the implementation. We really don't have a mechanism with the implementation at that point that we're involving parents, students, community members. So those were the only recommendations I got from Annette is in terms of strike-throughs.
school calendar, and Art can help me, but we just kind of had to clean it up because the policy's written for doing things one of two ways, one using 180 days, one using a number of hours. There's a different requirement if you have days than if you have hours. Hopefully we've made it easier to understand as we go. We're using the hours. School day, very little change on that one, just one little thing.
So wait, what are we saying there? We're taking out parent, student, community member involvement in
Yeah.
curriculum?
On that particular one, you're talking about implementation. And when you're deciding at what pace you're gonna implement something that's new, is how that's going to look, that really comes back to teacher input. It's not where we typically would be bringing in students and parents or community members to determine how teachers would feel most comfortable in the pacing of implementation of that.
Okay.
So that's that rationale within that you're really coming back to those professionals in the classrooms. An example of that would be, for example, with the computer science, coming back to them and saying what seems feasible when you're implementing this, where would it might best fit, because they know that background and the history and what that looks like, so.
But we're leaving it we're leaving it in the other one, the preceding
The,
area?
the one before that, then, that one's looking at curriculum development and design.
Okay.
And the only reason on that one, in just taking out the parents piece, is oftentimes they're working with community members who might also be parents, but sometimes they're not. An example might be within the career and technical education advisories. Those could be community members or business people that are experts in those fields too, coming in, but they might not be parents anymore, or they started or their kids have graduated. So to me, that's kind of that technical piece of a community member might be a parent, but not always. Might they be a part of those groups?
My apologies, I think I didn't have that curriculum thing on my packet there, so I was talking policies ahead of that, I think. So if we're finished with this one, what's the next one that comes out?
Curriculum evaluation.
Oh, yeah, those were, during our meeting, I talked about having a net look at them, and
Here, he's got him up there. Is that it, Ray?
they should have been in the packet that came out.
There you go. It wasn't out of order. He jumped ahead of me. Now, that's fine. So we would be down to,
These are all first reading ones.
research?
602.4, that's the last one.
Down to research?
Yep.
And that was just a change, the way it was before, they always used the word experimental programs, and we didn't really think our students need to be guinea pigs. The whole thing is research on that one. So it really didn't change anything, just some verbiage. Public participation of board members stayed pretty much the same. Am I, oops, nope, I've gone too far.
Yeah, that'll be,
That'll
those will be
stop
our.
at the end of research,
Yep.
okay.
So that group that we just went through, that's all for first reading. We'll bring them back next month for second reading. If anything comes up in between, or any concerns or anything that go beyond what we've talked through tonight, make sure you let us know. So we'll do that as a separate motion for first reading of the policies that Ken just reviewed.
No.
I move approval of first
Okay.
reading.
Motion made by Ken,
I'll second it.
seconded by Sue. Any further discussion on the first reading of those items? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And then the second reading of the next items.
And that's starting with the 213.
Public, and we've had these changes. What I'm looking here is what we looked at last meeting.
Yep.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions, I guess, or do you want to go by one or anything? I mean,
I did catch a typo that from the first reading in that 213, 5 minutes or less rather than 5 minutes of less. But,
okay.
The only thing, in terms of policies you visited before, 507.2, the administration of medication to students, and we talked specifically within the law of asthma and inhalers and EpiPens, and the question was asked about, does that also apply to diabetics? And I got a very quick, very thorough answer from ISB, no it doesn't, because insulin is just a different drug, and because of the complications of administering that, it is not covered by this policy specifically. So this does, it's as written as we have it, asthma and EpiPens, but.
So do we need to create one?
Well, I could read you the answer from Siobhan Schneider from ISB, but she made it sound like, no, that's a totally different deal because of the risks that go along with that.
But I think okay, because I know that several of the parents had said at the middle school or the high school that there's not training on if a kid were to be slipping into a coma, you just wait for them to call EMS. Whereas the type 1 parents are very adamant that there are steps that we should be taking that can save these kids'
I think there's
lives.
I mean, I'll listen anytime if there's an area we need training, and we're not doing what we should do. I don't know if that's a board policy issue, but.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at Irving,
Well, that's.
there's a young man who is my cousin, he's type 1 and
There's several that are.
he struggles, he struggles, and it's a day-to-day fight.
Well, I think-
And his mom worries that,
But I think elementaries are different. I know at Irving, they're regulated on a computer. Like their pumps are hooked up so the nurses can see their numbers.
so if they have
all
something,
over.
can we administrate it then at the elementary level?
I believe our nurses at the elementary are evaluating them and are following them all day long.
So they
and
can take
see.
action if,
Yeah.
so it's
So
just the
they're-
middle school and middle school and high school that they can't take action on?
I believe that they have, that set of our medical staff has not been educated as to, I think we just decided to educate the elementary
Okay.
nurses. So like, all these kids carry around cell phones that show their levels. And those cell
Right.
phones are hooked into their parents' cell phones and the nurse
Right.
at the elementary.
I can just speak that at the middle school, we have had, student services such as that. Those kids have health plans, and the school nurse does train those teams of teachers on the health plan of those students. So
Well, maybe I will go back
it
and
might
do,
just be a follow-up.
So if they have something wrong, can they act then, or do they have to wait for an ambulance to get there? If their numbers jump so far off, they have to have an action taken.
Those are per the training of the nurse to the staff as to what they would be doing, but we have had students that have the glucose monitoring systems that you're talking about.
Right,
That send
Yeah.
signals and, it's in their health plans that they can have their cell phones with them at all times. This is
Right.
how it functions, this is how many times the teachers prompt the student even to check, their systems. So there might be an oversight from there, but what you're describing has taken place at the middle school in the past too.
It just seems we have a lot more
Make sure that we're
type
I-
1 kids.
I'll look into that a little bit more, both from the parent's perspective and from the nurse's
Yeah,
perspective.
and I can visit with the nurses too. I've not had this brought to me as an issue, as a concern.
I know that when I was, first said that I was, running for school board, several of them I received messages from as far as what is my take on how to help diabetics in the classroom and stuff, so.
But I still think it should come from you. I mean, I'm not, nothing against asking, but,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we need to formally know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And talk to every school or the nurses and
Well,
make
I
sure
know
we're
any,
consistent.
I would think any student who's been coming through our school with diabetes would have a health plan. I mean, even elementary, and then it's a matter of following the plan.
But is the question, does the health plan allow,
For self-administration,
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah, action.
nurse to do something, or is it not?
They get low, a lot of times they can just eat candy or some sugar or drink some
Yeah.
juice and try and get their blood sugar count back up, but it's just, I mean, I used to have diabetics when they had none of this, and so you just had to watch the kids, and if you thought, you didn't know what they were doing, but I have no, and now it's so mechanized, but a lot of times you just gave them juice, or I always had candy and sugar and stuff
But
in
they
the
can
class, because
slip.
if they got high, it was.
Yeah,
They
well,
can
I
slip
know
pretty
my
quick.
cousin, she has it on her phone, so if she's at work and she sees his numbers drop, she makes an immediate phone call to the school nurse to make sure they're aware, and did something
Well-
happen, did he eat something at lunch, he went,
I'll visit some more with the nurses as a first step.
And I guess my more in-depth question would be is, do we have a policy on the sugar drop seizures? Because that's more of the concern, if it's the seizures that they go into because of the fast insulin drop, and sometimes that can happen within minutes. So,
be just curious to know what that is.
Teachers aren't allowed to give the shots, are they?
Okay, we are,
Can the nurses give shots, but not the staff, the teaching staff give shots?
You'd have to check with the nurses, but typically they have those EpiPens in the nurse's office too, and the students sometimes have those that they've carried with them. It depends on their specific plan, because each student's different as to what they need. So,
Yeah, I am interested because I know nothing about the health. All I know is our teachers are not healthcare workers, and I do not want to open them up to liability.
There's to administer medication, there's an education component for that. I mean, even if you're talking about giving a kid a daily dose of something where he keeps a prescription in the office, so, I mean, our teachers are not, are not doing that.
I didn't think so.
But let me talk some more to nurses. We'll revisit this, come back to it. Well, no, I mean, that's a kind of a study item
Okay.
for me,
So we
but
can
I
go
don't
ahead.
think it impacts
Okay.
what we've got right here, other than the question of, is there a need for a different policy or additional policy? The only other thing in terms of second reading that was a change, if you go to the last one, which is the seatbelt one in buses, which was a new policy, 711.10. Just added that last sentence, since the time you approved the first reading, and that is all adults accompanying students as bus riders are expected to utilize the lap and shoulder seat belts too. That was something that, recommendation that came from Ron Swartz, the transportation director, just the idea that if you had an adult there, they should be modeling, setting the example, using the seatbelt as well.
I did sneak onto a wrestling bus and they all had their seatbelts on, which I know how they get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go make weight somewhere, but they all had their,
Excellent.
so.
I have a quick question. This is more for me to try to understand. Back on the student insurance, so 507.6.
Yep.
With that new legislation with concussion insurance, is that something that we've educated our parents or coaches about? The Farm Bureau and both the unions have come together and provided concussion insurance for people in athletics and extracurricular.
I don't know, that would come, I'm sure that would be, the push would come through our activities office, letting them know it's available. Was that just this year, Sue? Is that a new
It
product?
went through last legislative session.
Okay.
So last year it
Okay.
went through.
I went to the coaches meeting to start this school year with activities directors, run through things with coaches. I don't remember that being mentioned.
I think it's pretty recent though, isn't it?
It went into session
Okay.
it was effective July 1.
Okay. So I doubt it, I guess is the best answer I can give. I doubt
Okay.
it's really been publicized, but it's good to know about.
Yeah.
Is it optional or everyone's covered?
Well, the insurance, there's a form they check that there's a waiver, basically, and they're saying that, and we have, very few take insurance through the school, I think, John, right?
I was wondering with the concussion.
Oh, the
part.
concussion.
Yeah, I mean, this seems like this is like something you can do in lieu of having other insurance. I was just wondering what the concussion.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
If it's
investigate, I
appropriate
don't.
to have this here, or is it something?
Yeah, that was just so
Yeah.
anybody that sustains a concussion that is diagnosed by a medical professional within the school-sponsored event, and they go and get a CAT scan or have to ride an ambulance, it will be covered under this insurance. Jeff, is that how you understand it?
Is that as a supplement to their, if they currently have insurance, it would be to offset any further costs that wouldn't be covered under your own insurance?
Yeah, and I think there's also though, for those that don't have
Right.
insurance.
They're not insured.
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
That's how we probably make sure, I think.
Are we anywhere close to being able to pass approval of this second reading of these and move on? Anybody else have questions on it?
I think we're ready for a motion.
I'll move to approve the
second read, board policies 213, 507.1, 507.8, R1, and 711.10.
Motion made by Ben,
Seconded.
seconded by Lori. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Oh, aye. Did we say aye?
Yes.
Sorry.
Right.
Oh, I did.
Next board agenda.
Yeah, one of the bigger items next time will be the getting calendar approval, additional school
Are we-
calendar.
Have they come to kind of an agreement then?
Yeah, I think they've met again, I think they'll be ready. And I didn't visit with Ron today, but.
We have an
we'll
HR
do-
meeting tomorrow.
Yep, HR in the morning, yep. We'll get building discipline reports in front of you to next meeting. We'll try to do that in the semester report.
All right. Board calendar. Everybody knows the dates of the committee meetings. Everybody good with those dates?
In Arizona for one of them.
Oh,
Ask for other,
All right.
ask if there's any other.
Anything else? Yeah, Carolyn.
I guess I was just wondering with the 2 extra committees, I can't remember where we left it, if we're supposed to find a time or how we're doing that. So it's on the calendars, is that just up to Sue and I to figure out, or we were gonna kind of merge it in with?
Yeah, yeah, I think it is up to you. We did talk about the fact that the sort of the wellness,
Yeah,
you know, that, and I've talked to Christy heads up a school wellness committee,
right,
that would be a good thing to bring Sue and Carolyn into. Communication, I think, would be more of a kind of probably informal,
okay,
depending on what you're working on.
okay.
And I know I'm gonna get together with Rob and Ben in the pretty near future on the safety one too. I guess I don't necessarily see those committees being a monthly set time, but
Okay.
that's really at the pleasure of the board. I mean,
So, the wellness one, she'll take the lead as far as reminding us to
What's that?
things.
yeah, the wellness committee,
Yeah.
as you're having meetings, different groups in, you'll push information out to Sue and Carolyn. Those are our two board members.
All right.
I have one to say, I know the school board committee doesn't know, a couple of you know, but, we've had a couple homeless issues. I've had a lot of help from, Coach Young, Aaron Lester, Jory Coughlin, on a high school student we have. And on an elementary, we've got a couple in there. Amy Notnett Wilder has been great, the school's been great getting transportation to and from Des Moines where the shelter is. So the staff has been unbelievably amazing when I've asked for help with a student to talk to, counsel. They've been absolutely wonderful. So, and Derek at Irving is continuing with one we have. So that's compliments to the staff of our district, because that's just amazing. They jump in and help with these kids and families.
Good to hear, cool.
Thanks.
Rob, my name's KJ Rankin. I took a position with Emerson, quote unquote, took a position. I haven't taken it yet. So everybody, all of my stuff is here. My background check has been approved. My physical is here.
Excuse me, we approved him this evening.
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, that's part of the consent agenda, I tried to explain
Sweet,
that.
never mind, you guys do.
KJ, you're on there,
I'm
dude.
just gonna sit here.
I did check to make sure you never know.
We're glad you said that.
know
Welcome to your board.
You were one of our amendments.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You were an
say it with
amendment.
your police voice.
A for effort, yeah.
It was really fun watching it, probably won't be back. I might miss the next one.
With that, I would move to.
Adjourn.
All right. And
I'll second it.
seconded by Donna. Everyone's in favor?
Very nice.
Aye. All right.
I've done an amazing job.
I'm always gonna wonder why people are dying so quickly. Yeah.
Me too.
You have your, you've got time to sign thing, you see your signature.
Yeah, what they do down.
Yeah, I mean, what, Mike went up to 25 and then it went down to 9. And I thought it was gonna go up.
Maybe these aren't real great.
Is your thing hot? Mine's
Yeah,
like-
mine's hot.